Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm actually going to be working on this Trek 4300. Fix it up and walk you through the process of everything that I find wrong with it and how we can fix it. So here we go. So it's a nice Trek 4300 made out of aluminum. Pretty basic Trek bike. Excellent for starting out if you're just going to start into mountain bike riding. Want to get off of the paved or gravel trails and do some dirt trails, single track. It's got the front fork RST Gila, 100 millimeters of travel. Pretty sweet bike. It's got the crowbar, 5-degree handlebars. Crowbar actually makes some pretty good handlebars. I like them a lot. They seem to hold up well and take a beating. 26-inch wheels. And these tires actually have pretty dang good tread on them. So it is a 24 speed, so 3x8. It's got 3 chain rings up front and then 8 in the back. All right, let's walk through this thing. So first things first, I like to see how everything's kind of working. So I'm gonna go ahead and shift through all the gears and make sure that they're kind of catching every single one. Just kind of assessing to see what I need to do to fix this bike. Alright, so it looks like the chain is actually binding up a little bit as I was going through that. I was pedaling real quick and then I just stopped and the chain kind of did this deal. So there's one problem we're going to have to look into fixing. Figure out why it's doing that. Definitely should not be. So let's see what else we can find here. Brakes are seeming to work pretty good. This one's not quite pulling equally, so I'll probably adjust that a little bit. Next, I'm going to just kind of grab both the tires and try and wiggle them a little bit. That's checking these bearings down in the front. That's solid. It's not wiggling at all, so check this one. Solid. Those bearings are nice and tight. Very good. I'm going to check the bearings here and here, and to do that, I just grab onto this and try and wiggle it back and forth. And since it is not wiggling, that is also nice and tight. So we're actually looking really good so far. Now I'm going to check this bottom bracket just a little bit. Just a quick test is you can grab both sides here and try and wiggle it. This one's nice and tight, so that's good. A lot of times if it's a bad bottom bracket, you will be able to feel a little bit of play there. Or on like a test drive, it'll creak or pop. I haven't ridden this one yet, so it passed the first test. So I need to work a little bit on some of the shifting because it wasn't perfect. So I might adjust that just a little bit. It's making quite a bit of sound up on there too. And that problem. So first things first, I kind of like to just get everything lubed up. So I'm going to get some WD-40, kind of spray it in here, spray it everywhere, maybe lube the chain. Sometimes if it hasn't been ridden in a while, things just kind of get caught. So we'll try that, see if it works. Over top of the kennel, into the basket. And work all that stuff in, make sure that it kind of spreads equally. So I'm just going to try and shift through the gears. Now it's time for the chain. So this is what I really like to use. It's 3-in-1 oil. I put that on my chain. To each their own. There's so many different types of bike chain oil. This works great for me, so this is what I use. part of the problem is, as you can see, when you're pedaling and you stop, your pedals are actually supposed to stop going. And right now they're not. So if you are riding this bike and you're pedaling, then you stop with your feet, then it's gonna stop just like that. And your chain should not do that. So, yep. But I just lubed that chain, so I'm gonna kind of work that lube on all the sprockets and chain rings. So I'm gonna shift through the gears again. And that actually helps to clean your sprockets, your all those cassettes. It gets lube on all of them, which is really good. Makes it look better too. It is working a little bit better just with some lube. It's still doing that problem though. So I'm actually going to pull this rear wheel off, and I'm going to check into this freewheel or sprocket cassette and see if something in there is kind of gumming up, because that's what I think it might be. Let's check it out. This bike is nice because it has a quick release, so I can just pop this back wheel off pretty easily. Yeah, I think this is the problem. So this should usually spin pretty easily, and as you can tell, when I go to spin it, it just stops right in place. So that is what is stopping the chain. All right, so I got my assortment of tools here. May or may not need all of them, but I'm gonna go ahead and take this rear cassette off. So first off, gotta take off the axle. Alright, so what I've got to do is, this tool fits in, and if I just try and spin it, it's gonna free spin that and I'll never be able to get it off. So this is called a chain whip, I believe is the name of the tool. This is a Conquer brand. But what you do with this is you just put it on your cassette and you kind of hold it just like that, and it's going to give you some grip on that cassette. And then you can link into this tool, and I'm going to have to put counter pressure on this tool while twisting this tool. Alright, that sound is good. Means I got it. Okay, so now I'll be able to just twist this completely out. So this back piece is actually, there's a couple different styles. This one is a cassette, rear cassette, because it comes out, basically will slide out in pieces. So like that, there's a bunch of most of these gears have different pieces. This one actually just has a couple, but on the inside, it's got all these different gears and slots that match this right here. It's got gears and slots, and there's only one way that these will slide on. So you really can't put it on wrong. It'll only fit one way. So this is our problem right here. It's just super gummed up. So I think I'm gonna have to take apart the axle now, basically, and kind of clean it up and maybe re-grease it. A couple more tools here to try and take this axle off. So let's see what we can do. Since it's an axle and it's made to spin, To get any of these off, you have to use one wrench on one side and the other on another side. Otherwise, like that, it'll just keep spinning and you'll never loosen it. So, starting to come loose here. One of the sides is. Okay, it's this side that's coming loose, which is fine. Really, I only need one side to come loose, because if I take all these nuts off, I'll be able to pull the axle out the other side. So it's always a good idea when you're working on this stuff to have a little magnetic tray. It's sticking to all my tools, but that way you don't lose any parts. So usually when you pull these out, a lot of times you'll get the bearings to, they just kind of fall everywhere and you lose those. So it's a good idea to have extra bearings on hand in case that happens. So this piece is actually kind of cone shaped, and it sits like that so that the, oh hi Roxy, the bearings on the inside can actually sit right in there and they'll roll around on that. So it's important that you get that in the right spot, going the right direction. Okay, now that I got that, I should be able to just push this axle, pull it out this side. So, as you can see, I've got some ball bearings that are just ready to fall out. So I'm going to get those ball bearings and put them in my magnetic tray. A lot of times it is easiest if you get a little pick that you can kind of fish them out with that, and it's really nice if they're magnetic, because then you can just put in a little magnet, and sometimes you can just pull them out that way. Always nice to have a magnet when you're working with these little steel ball bearings. So I just put the magnet end in, and I pulled out 3 of them. So this old grease in here is like glue. It is really bad. I'm hoping that's our problem. I think it is. Definitely worn out, got some water in there or something that just ruined that grease. So we're gonna clean it out best we can. Looking at it inside, you can just see the nasty grease. I need to get it all out of there. Got a whole pile of grease rags. Never underestimate the importance of a good grease rag. Come in super handy. First off, I'm just gonna get some WD-40, spray it in there. Get my grease rag and kind of get in there as best I can. There we go. So this piece right here was not spinning, and now as I spin it, it can just take off. So I'm just gonna clean it really good. Just try and get all that nasty old grease, that glue basically. It's about as thick as molasses, and it's not supposed to be. Alright, I got an old toothbrush. Just kidding. Gonna use that in here. Now I want to dry up most of that WD-40 with a grease rag. Then I'll pack it with new grease. Now's a good time to take a good look at all these little ball bearings. If they have had any rust or anything on them, they'll be pitted, kind of be really rough, and you're looking for just a shiny, smooth one. That's how they work best. So if they have any sort of pits on them, something like that, just replace them. Super easy to do. Nope. While you're kind of already got them out. So these ones look pretty good. I'm just gonna dip them into this WD-40 solvent stuff and clean them out. Get that old glue off of there. And I'll do the same thing to the axle. Looks like a new axle now. Cleaned up nicely. Check out those steelies. Those are nice and shiny. They all look great. None of them are pitted. Yeah. Could put those in a slingshot, like all of them at once, and just. Got my grease, park tool grease here. So I'm just gonna kind of coat the inside of this with a little grease in hopes that the bearings will actually just stick in there. Now you want to make sure that you put this in the same way that you got it out. So I actually got this end, came out of this side. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on here too while I'm thinking about it. Also not a bad idea to kind of grease your threads. Be super careful while you're doing this that you're not gonna kick out any of the bearings that you just put in. So, there we go, that spins nicely. Flip it to this side, and we'll go ahead and put our pieces back on. Okay, so as you're tightening this, you wanna make sure that it can still spin. If you get it if it's not tight enough, your axle will wiggle. So you want to tighten it enough that your axle does not wiggle, but you can still spin it nice and freely. So there's a fine line between tight enough and too loose. All right, that axle spins just perfect. And there's no real wiggle in it. What I'm going to do is tighten this one, or loosen this one and tighten this one at the same time, and those will kind of lock them together. Or I'm going to hold this one steady and tighten just this out one. That'll lock them together without tightening the axle, because we already set that axle to where it spins freely. And if I was to tighten on this side and tighten on this side, it would lock that axle in really, lock it up. But if I can lock these two together, then it holds it right in place where there's no play, and it locks it in nicely. So that spins great. Spin, 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 and this spins a ton better than it did. So to make sure that all these teeth line up, there's a bunch of them in here, but usually if you can find it, there's a fatter one right here that's a little bit wider than all these other ones. So you want to line up all the wider ones and all the way down that cassette, and then you got to find there's a bigger gap on this for that wider space. So it will only fit together one way, just like that. So while I'm doing this, I usually like to grab right here on this, push that down, and then it slides up nicely. Ready for the moment of truth? Now that that is working, I should be able to pedal this around and around and around, and then when I stop pedaling, it should not mess the chain up. Perfect. Notice that these aren't going around anymore, and the chain didn't get all slacked. We fixed it. All right, that's gonna wrap up today's video. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We were able to get that problem with the rear cassette figured out. So now when you're pedaling and you stop, that chain's not gonna come off and derail you. So that is awesome. All right, be sure to tune in for part 2 of this Trek 4300 build. And it should be coming out pretty quick. We're gonna go through the rest of the bike and make sure it's just ready to go.